sometimes we can feel shame when we don't catch on to something, and our children feel that, and that behavior is what we see, right? We don't always think of as parents what's underneath of it. So I wanted to create a situation where the character Sammy in this case would be very frustrated. And each day he would come home from school and his mom could see from his facial expressions, the way that his body language was, that he was so frustrated and getting angry. Because sometimes we don't know. We just see the behavior. We see why are you so angry? Or what's going on? We see a change in their behavior, but we don't know what necessarily is driving it.
Welcome to Real Talk with the Parenting Blueprint Coaches, where we discuss all aspects of parenting using the foundation of understanding personality dynamics to raise independent, responsible, and resilient children. My name is Karen Wagner, founder of Teaching Our Youth and the Parenting Blueprint. Let's dig right in with today's topic and have some real talk with the Parenting Blueprint Coaches. Do you remember when your kids were little and they were trying to learn a new task? Some kids just got to do it themselves, like Kyle was, I do, and the frustration of, trying to tie his shoes or zip up his coat and everything he wanted to himself. And then there's other kids that are just unsure and just don't know how to ask for help and just get very frustrated with that as well. So you are going to love what we're going to be sharing today, because I think we've all gone through that, especially parenting our younger kids. I am so excited that Mindy Green has published this is your first book. Is that correct, Mindy?
It's my first children's book, yes. So I have a sample of it here. So the copy that you would get would not have this gray line, but yes, first children's book.
And so, Mindy, welcome back to the podcast today. I know that this has been a labor of love, writing this book about Sammy. And for those parents who really struggle with those years of, trying to teach our kids these tasks, and the ones that can be probably real dominant and trying to do it on their own and not wanting any help, and those who are struggling but don't quite know how to ask for help when they can't actually learn a new task. This is that developmental stage, of our kids that can just be frustrating for us and them. And so you experienced this firsthand with your grandson, which led you to write this book. So I'm not going to steal your thunder, but tell us a little bit about how this came about, because this was personal for you.
It was. So I just want to say too, it's like it's my grandson, but it's also harkens me back to those days with my children. And so, I had children who wanted to do it on their own. And then, I'm thinking about my younger daughter. She said, I do. And so she would, no matter how long it took and we needed to get out the door, and we're feeling the frustrate me of the time crunch, because I felt like I was always running around with my hair on fire. And she'd say, I do. And so I was and then I had a son who just really wanted me to do it all the time for him. And I was concerned about, what does that mean for him? Am I going to always have to tie his shoes? And I can say now he's in his 20s and I do not. So we got through it. But going to my grandson, yes. So this was an issue for him. He had gotten a new pair of shoes. And for some reason, and I want to call out the shoe manufacturers or the shoelace manufacturers here, because why do they make some of these shoelaces so darn long? Yes. So he had a pair of shoes, and it's like the shoelaces just were really long to begin with. And he had just learned how to tie his shoes and was Karen, so proud of himself that he was able to do it. And these particular ones, though, he was having to double and triple knot them, just because they would otherwise, like the laces, or the loops were like dragging on the ground behind him. And he had extra shoelace at the end. And it was a mess. And so one day we were just kind of laughing about it, because it had just gotten so silly about how long these shoelaces were. And so I said, you know what? Why don't we write a little story about that? And so he's my kid who's like my grandson, who's very creative. And so we came up with a little book. He did all of the illustrating himself. And it turned out to be a fun little book. It was about 10 pages. It wasn't super long. And so that was like the inspiration for me then writing this book, because I had said to him one day, I think that this could make a really fun book that other kids and other parents might really enjoy. And he's like, "Yeah, I think you should do that." And so that's what I did. Is I just like I sat down and I thought, what is it that, what could this story be? And where could we go with it? And so that's a little bit of the background of it.
Yeah, and you're right. There are so many different ways that our kids can approach these new tasks, like the I do, and then the frustrating of wanting to learn, and then like you said, the kids that will let you continue to do it for them because they
Mhm.
don't have the confidence or willing to try, or when they try, it's hard, so it's just easier for us to do. And I'm not going to say that I didn't just do it because I got to get out the darn door. But I also know, as I talk about, we need to pass the baton. They need to take it on, and it's us being patient as we teach them to do those things and relinquish that. So, gosh, it was just a brilliant because we've all been through this. But
Mhm.
sometimes we wonder, how are we really supposed to handle this in a way that we are not losing it on these kids all the time? Whether the frustrating with the I do when they're clearly having a challenge and they won't let you help, right? Or feeling as though I'm doing it all the time. And then when you go to pass that baton to them, they really struggle and then they get frustrated and cry and they feels that they can't do it, or we end up doing it for them. So this is going to be so helpful because this is a book that you read with the child, right?
Absolutely. So the age range is I really say from like 4 to about 10. And obviously for the younger reader, the younger kids, this is a read aloud. And for the older kids, my grandson now who inspired this story is 9. And so when our sample came in, he sat down at the kitchen table and he started to read it.
Mm.
And so one of the things that he said is as he was reading it to his brother and I, is like this would probably be something that he would read over a couple of nights, sit down, have his mom read with him. And so I just thought, what a wonderful way for parents to have these discussions with their kids. So you're going to laugh. You're going to nod quite a bit when these certain things happen. And also, there's a little twist at the end and a little surprise. And so I think that will delight all of the readers, and these are conversations in the in between time that you're having with your kids about, well, what would you do,
Right.
in that
Exactly.
situation?
Exactly. Yeah. There is
Um,
no guidance. We're all winging it, right? Trying to get through every
exactly,
day.
exactly. And so it brings up these topics of conversation, and sometimes it makes it easier to talk about these things because you're doing it through the context of the pages of a book.
Love it. I love it. So as you were writing this book, as parenting blueprint coaches, we also talk about there's always a root to the behavior. Because
Mhm.
different personalities will handle things in a different way. Of course, our dominant kids who want to do it by themselves, they're the I do kids, right? But each one of them may approach a task in a different way. So, how does this story, how did you weave that in, kind of into the story to reflect this concept in a way that our kids can understand?
Yeah, so I just wanted to make it like, first of all, a real situation that they could find themselves in. Because I think when they're able to relate that to something that they may have gone through or someone else in the family's gone through, then it helps, right? It takes out some of the sometimes we can feel shame when we don't catch on to something, and our children feel that, and that behavior is what we see, right? We don't always think of as parents what's underneath of it. So I wanted to create a situation where the character Sammy in this case would be very frustrated. And each day he would come home from school and his mom could see from his facial expressions, the way that his body language was, that he was so frustrated and getting angry and snapping and suspicious. In this case, he's suspicious of a couple different family members, that maybe they're playing a trick on him. And so that's where I wanted to go with that is like then, him being able to, through his mom's guidance, be able to articulate what's going on, what is he feeling? Because sometimes we don't know. We just see the behavior. We see why are you so angry? Or like, what's going on? We see a change in their behavior, but we don't know what necessarily is driving it.
Yeah, because we tend to work with the surface behavior. That's really the whole
Hmm.
concept of what we do, because each personality has an internal emotional need that drives that behavior. So
Yeah,
it's important to include that emotional side of learning and frustration rather than just focusing on the tying of the shoes. So you really built in some what we call the emotional EQ, right? The emotional quotients, right?
exactly.
And
Hmm.
understand and for kids to understand those feelings. So how were you able to do that at a level that the kids can understand?
Well, again, I think that part of it was just showing the progression for him of how he was frustrated, and then it just built up. It's like I often think of when I was growing up, my mom had a pressure cooker, and so now we have Instapot. So I'm thinking of things that the parents might know, and it's just how like the pressure builds up until it explodes, and so that's what I was trying to show with Sammy, that each time something would happen and his shoelaces were even longer, and just using silly analogies. Like one is like, that they were longer than, party streamers or different things, so that the kids could then be able to see and imagine what that would be and how they might be putting themselves in that situation and thinking, well, what would I do?
Right.
And then for parents to see these as opportunities, to really help their kids like be able to slow down that frustration
Yeah.
and be able to regulate themselves. Those big feelings, like, well, what do you do with big feelings? And so at the end for parents, and this is so helpful for the kids, is I put a whole section in there about a way that they can calm themselves, and the parents can help them through this. So we talk about bubble breathing. And then I also have a problem solving guide that parents can go through with their kids to be able to identify what is it that they're frustrated about, and how is that affecting their behavior. So, there's just so much here.
I know. So this really is, when you read it with your child, an opportunity to have conversation about these things.
Yes,
And
exactly.
you did in this book include some segments just for the parent,
Mhm.
as you were talking about, even with some of the breathing. So, what types of tips or insights do you share there? Just to give parents a tease, because of course, parents and grandparents just get the book. This is going to be the first of many, and then your kids are going to learn about Sammy and is it Watson the dog, right? And there'll be
Yeah.
some new characters, in their world that they can learn from, and as you continue the series. But in that section, what types of tips and strategies are you sharing with them to be able to help their kids with regulating emotions?
Absolutely. So one of them is that, and we know, and I think we know it, but we don't always think about it as parents, that a lot of times, like our kids are so frustrated, they're so angry, or there's like some big emotion. And so what happens in that case is that their brains, like the thinking part of their brain is not working, it is shut down. And so and that's why we often hear people say, just breathe or take a pause or whatever. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to go into that. Like, why is that important? And so when we can pause or take a breath, and I use the example of bubble breathing, which is just a really great way to think about, like, you're breathing in, and then when you're blowing out, like you're blowing out bubbles. And it's just something easy for kids to understand or to imagine. And the reason why we're doing that is to allow them to have that moment to reoxygenate their brain, to reset it, and allow them to go from that fight, flight, or freeze moment when they're really stuck in that emotion to then moving to the part where they're ready for the next step, which is problem solving. And so in the problem solving, I break that down into different steps
Mhm.
that you can do as a parent. First of all, it is taking the pause. Um, it's being able to identify what's going on and then come up with some solutions from there. So for Sammy, he's trying to figure out like why his shoelaces are are so stretchy, and so then he comes up with a plan, and then we see that throughout the book how he does that. So, but again, I wanted the parents to know these things because sometimes we just, again, we see the behavior and it's our reaction in the moment to then, clamp down on the kids and yell or like, get frustrated with them. And, when you meet frustration with frustration, what happens is that no one wins. And, then you have a very tense, explosive moment.
Absolutely. I've had many of those, especially with Kyle.
Yes, me too.
So I love the fact that you'll take some of these strategies, but not just what the strategy is, but why the strategy works. And I really
Mhm.
think that's I just have to tell you, having been working in the parenting space for so long, I feel sometimes we are playing whack-a-mole with trying to find this and find that and what's going to work. And to be able to bring clarity in following in with the framework that we've already started as parent coaches, to just continue along to give parents those insights and tips on what to do instead of what we naturally would want to do, which is be in the frustration, do it for them, or or just get into that moment of that power struggle. That this is really going to be able to calm and teach at the same time.
Exactly. Yes.
Yes. So in the book we talk about Winston. I know we've talked about Winston in the past. So who is Winston? How did he get into the story?
Well, so this is a little bit of a something that's special to me. So I grew up with dachshunds. I had two dachshunds growing up, and then I had a dachshund who was the doggy love of my life, and he died several years ago. And now we have a new little wiener dog, and so this is based on him. It looks very similar to him. His name is Hubie, and Hubie is the kind of like the inspiration behind Winston, just the things that Winston gets into and the way that he behaves. And for dachshunds, our doggies are so curious and they just love to be with us. And so we see how special that relationship is between he and Sammy. So that's the inspiration behind
So he's
Winston.
a real dog.
He is a real
Plays a
dog and
real
he
role
keeps
in
me
this.
on my toes.
And it is true, when you see kids with their pets, there is definitely something special there. And so Winston's probably observing things that Sammy is going through, right? And so be able to see that way you wove that in. So you said there's something special at the end of the book, but can you give us a little hint about that surprise ending without giving away the surprise ending?
Ooh, how do I do this? Let me think for a moment here. Um, so as we go through the book and Sammy is trying to figure out, like he's really thinking that there's somebody or something stretching his shoelaces. And so, he's very suspicious of everybody at this point because he's like somebody's playing a trick on him. And so the surprise ending is for him finding out who it is, and he's created a whole plan to catch the culprit.
Oh, that's good. That's good. That's good. That's good. I am so excited about how this is unfolding. Not only the way you've brought this to life, but the value that it's going to bring to families. And when my kids were growing up, I did rely on some book series to help me get through various topics that I just didn't know how to communicate effectively to my kids, and I was fearful that I might say the wrong thing or they get the wrong impression. And you are guiding this through using research based strategies that you have woven in to a children's book to really help parents and grandparents. Because, see, my kids aren't home anymore, but I'm getting the book for when they come here, when the grandkids come here, because that'll be a book that I can read with each one of them. I mean, it is just so let me ask you, from a coach and of course a writer's perspective, what was the most exciting part for you seeing this come together?
I think this is just on all levels, as a parent, as a coach, as an author, is to be able to see the idea that I had in my head come to life. And so, I worked with a wonderful illustrator, and she and I had lots of conversations you know, about the characters and what I wanted their characters to be able to express. And who are they in relationship with one another? Who are they individually? And there's so much more that goes into that than we imagine. So it's like I felt like, in my mind, I had like the skeleton of who the character was going to be. And so Dory, the illustrator was helped me to put the flesh on the bones. And so I created these people, and it's like the world that, and this is where I think the parents and the kids will really relate to this, is that this could be their home. This could be their mom, this could be their dog, this could be their pesky older brother, so I just think it's relatable. And as a coach, that's what I really want, is I want, anyone who reads this to look at this and say, hey, I've been there, or, oh, I get that. And I didn't understand that, and just see themselves in the pages.
I love this. I love this. And I believe we as parents, and I'm going to reflect back even in my time of raising my kids, I probably struggled with the emotional regulation, but didn't know what it was or what it was called. Right? I mean, can we say that? And I think right now we're recognizing that we see our kids and they're growing, their brains are developing, and there are going to be big mood swings. And as adults, sometimes we're a little bit more regulated. Some of us maybe not so much. I don't know, depending upon your personality.
Depending on the day.
Right? So, but being able to talk about that together, and even being able to share with the child how you feel about certain things, when certain things happened, and the frustrations that you've had when there were tasks or things that you tried to do that you couldn't do. And just really making it a family story. I love that you're saying that families will see their family in the story, in Sammy's family, right? To be able to see that, a sibling and the parents and the dog, and just making it so relatable that they'll just be embedded and be looking for Sammy's next adventure. I know there's
Yes,
going to be another
exactly.
one. I know there's going to be another one.
Yes.
But to be able to provide that emotional regulation support to parents who are really struggling. And believe it or not, I just came from the dentist. I told you before we hopped on, but the hygienist was talking to me about her wild child who was 4 years old and having three other kids that did not have the same energy that this little girl does, and trying to teach this when she's never had to do it before. And so having these types of resources for parents to say, there's nothing wrong with your child. We might just need to address things in a different way, but giving them because I'm very results driven, the concrete strategies on how to do it, not just what to do, not just the breathing, that you need to do the breathing because people say that, but you are giving more instruction as to how to do the breathing and why do the breathing, right? You know what I mean? And then it just makes sense. So I love the fact that you went into a deeper level of understanding and explaining that why. And so it's just so exciting. So I know you've got a book launch that is coming up. I don't know when this episode is going to go out, whether we're going to be in there, but the book is ready and it's on Amazon because I just checked it today. I'm going to be providing the link to it, underneath the description for this particular episode. But besides Amazon, is there anywhere else that you can find that book right now, or is that mainly the place?
It will be on Amazon, and it will also, you'll find it on my, eventually on my website,
Right.
that there will be a link there that you can follow to take you to Amazon as well.
Okay.
And for those people who, I just want to say this as well, that the hardcover, the hardback will be available a week later. So the official launch, I'm having a party just to let everybody know, hey, it's here, although it's already on Amazon. That will be the Saturday, October 11th at 1 p.m. And so the
That's
hardback
coming
will
up
come
in
out.
2 days.
Yes, it
2
is.
days.
So we're like right here. So
Now, by the time this gets out, it might be past already. I don't know if we're going to get that
right.
episode
And
out,
that's
but
completely okay. But if you're also looking for a hardback, and the reason why I say about the hardback um, is because we know that our kids can be a little rough on things. And so, this is the paperback. And so paperback, things can happen, and we know that. And so if you're looking for the hardback version, it will be out a week later, October 18th. And that may be, a better bet for you, just depending on how your kids handle things in the house. So, but they're available, and then there eventually will be a Kindle version, which will be out later this year.
this is a
So,
great gift idea, Mindy. A great gift for
mhm.
birthdays or holidays. You know what I mean? To be able to, I always like giving books anyway, but a book that
Yeah,
that has a purpose, back to my drive of always wanting to, to get results. So I know you just finished this book and it was a complete labor of love. And I know after I finished my first book, my husband asked me the same question, but what's next? What's next for Sammy's adventures?
Yeah, well, there are a couple of things that are coming up, and so there will be a an activity book that will be that will go can accompany Sammy's super stretchy shoelaces. So there will be coloring pages, and there will be little adventures and activities because I don't know that we said it, but Sammy in this book, there's a little bit of a mystery, and that's where that surprise ending comes in because he's trying to figure it out. He's putting the clues together and and trying to come up with who the culprit is. So there'll be some activities like that in that activity book. And then there's going to be next year, because this took me about a year to get everything completed. Next year, I'm planning on releasing the second in the series. When this one will be about Winston, Sammy's dog.
Well, I'm so excited to hear this. So Mindy, I just want to tell you how proud I am and how excited I am about what you are now able to add to your already, established coaching practice and the principles that you're already teaching to give parents something that they can have tangible in hand to work with their children on. So I am just so excited. And for our listeners, parents, grandparents, click the link below and get the book, and hopefully that hardback will be ready. It'll be a great gift coming up, for your kids and being able to take that time to read and process and go through this journey with Sammy and his stretchy shoelaces. I think they only make them so many sizes and they put the smallest ones in the kids and they're not small enough. If you really want to know the truth, I think that's how they get so darn long for those little kids. But anyway, it is going to be a wonderful opportunity for families to spend that quality time together. So those of you, I want to thank you for joining us for this episode. If you like this, click like and subscribe to this and share this episode out if you know that there are other parents that are struggling with helping their child with emotional regulation, especially with some of the frustrating things that they're learning when they're in those younger ages. So again, thank you for joining us. Mindy, thanks again. Do you have one last thing you want to share with your parents before we go?
Well, yes. One of the things that I do want to share is that we just talked about emotional regulation and emotional intelligence. And I want to let you know that you're not going to find any of that wording in here. This is just it's written in everyday language. It's relatable. So I know sometimes we're like, oh, we use these big words and, like, what do they really mean? But I'm showing you what it means through the action that happens in the book. So I just want you to know that it's not going to be boring and it's like, trying to figure out on how to decode these words.
Exactly. You did a wonderful job in telling a story and making a point, telling a story and making a point, and with some principles that not only I'll probably learn from them too, but also teach our kids in being able to remind them about certain things even after they're done the book, going back and reflecting on the tools and strategies that you taught. So Mindy, again, thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. Looking forward to the next book. But those of you who are looking for a resource, I'm telling you, this is going to be a fun way to be able to explore this with your kids. So thanks again for joining us on this episode. Look forward to seeing you the next time. Take care. Bye.